The mysterious encounter. On a distant planet called Theranthea, the sun cast a golden glow over its lush landscapes. The air was filled with vibrant colors, unlike anything seen on Earth. A team of explorers from Earth had landed here, eager to uncover the secrets of this alien world. They were excited but also cautious. This was a place full of unknowns. The team, led by Captain Sarah, consisted of 6 members, each with a unique skill set. They had trained for this mission for years, prepared to face the unknown. As they stepped off their spacecraft, the soft ground beneath their boots felt like a sponge, almost alive. Sarah looked around with wonder. "This place is incredible," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. They set up camp near a sparkling blue river that twisted through the landscape. The water shimmered as it caught the light, and strange flowers lined its banks. Some flowers had petals as big as Sarah's hand, and others glowed softly in shades of purple and green. Everyone was eager to explore, but they knew they had to stay together. "Let's head down to the river," suggested Mark, the botanist. "I want to see what kind of plants grow here." The team agreed and followed him, their curiosity guiding them. As they walked, they heard unusual sounds. It was a mix of soft whispers and melodic tunes, almost like a song. The team exchanged glances, their hearts racing with anticipation. "What do you think it is?" whispered Julia, the linguist, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, but it sounds beautiful," replied David, the engineer. When they reached the riverbank, they noticed strange creatures. They were small, about the size of a child, with shimmering skin that changed colors. They had big eyes that sparkled with curiosity. The beings were gathered around the flowers, delicately plucking them, and placing them into baskets made of leaves. "Are they aliens?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with awe. "They look so different from us." Mark knelt down to get a closer look. "They might be friendly. Let's try to communicate." He waved his hand slowly, trying to show he meant no harm. The creatures stopped and turned their big eyes toward him. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. One of the creatures stepped forward, a bright blue being with a soft glow. It reached out a small hand and touched Mark's finger. He smiled, feeling a connection. The creature made a series of chirping sounds, and suddenly, everyone felt a rush of warmth. It was as if the creature was sharing a feeling of joy. Sarah quickly took out her translator device. "Let's see if we can understand them," she said. The device started to whir and beep. The chirps from the creature transformed into words. "Welcome, friends," it said in a melodic voice. "We are the Leora. We share this land with you." The team couldn't believe it. They were communicating with aliens. Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Thank you for welcoming us," she replied. "We come in peace." The Leora seemed to understand, their colors shifting to brighter shades of blue and green. The leader of the Leora, who appeared to be the same blue being, gestured for them to follow. They moved deeper into the forest, and the humans walked in wonder, marveling at the plants and creatures around them. As they ventured further, they arrived at a beautiful clearing. In the center stood a large ancient tree with glowing fruits hanging from its branches. The tree seemed to pulse with life, its roots sprawling out like a web. "This is our sacred tree," the leader of the Leora explained. "Its fruits hold great power. They provide us with energy and strength." Mark's eyes widened with interest. "Can we try them?" he asked eagerly. The Leora nodded, their bright eyes shining with excitement. One of the creatures climbed the tree with surprising agility and plucked a fruit. It was a vibrant orange with golden specks. "Be careful," warned Sarah. "We don't know what effects it might have." Mark took the fruit, inspecting it closely. It smelled sweet, almost like honey. He took a bite, and a burst of flavor exploded in his mouth. It was delicious. As he chewed, he felt a surge of energy flow through him. "This is amazing," he exclaimed. One by one, the team members tried the fruit, each experiencing a similar rush of vitality. They laughed and shared stories, feeling a bond forming with the Leora. For the first time, they felt like they belonged in this alien world. But as they celebrated, a shadow crossed the clearing. A low rumble echoed in the distance, and the atmosphere shifted. The Leora's colors darkened, and their joyful expressions turned to worry. The leader stepped forward, its voice now serious. "Danger comes. Others want our power." Panic surged through the team. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, concern flooding her heart. "Others from the stars. They wish to take our fruits and use them for war," the Leora warned, their voices filled with urgency. Realization hit Sarah like a thunderbolt. They had only just arrived, and already they were caught in the middle of a conflict. The explorers had come seeking knowledge, but now they were facing a threat that could change everything. As the first signs of the incoming danger loomed on the horizon, Sarah knew they had to make a choice. They could either run and save themselves or stand with the Leora to protect their new friends. The mysterious encounter had opened a door to a world of wonder and peril, and the team had to decide where their loyalties lay. The gathering storm. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm orange glow over the clearing. The air crackled with tension as the Leora expressed their fears about the approaching threat. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She knew they couldn't abandon the Leora. They had formed a bond built on trust. "We need to prepare," Sarah declared, her voice steady. "If danger is coming, we must stand with the Leora." Mark nodded in agreement. "We can help them defend their home. We've trained for unexpected situations." This is no different. The Leora, sensing their resolve, gathered closer. The leader, whose name was Derek, spoke again, his tone grave. "Our ancestors fought hard to protect this land. We cannot allow outsiders to exploit our fruits. We need allies, and you are our allies." Julia, the linguist, stepped forward. "What do you need us to do?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. She had always loved stories of courage and adventure, and now she was living one. Zarek gestured towards the towering trees surrounding the clearing. "We must rally our people. Many live in the forests and hills, but they are scared. We need to unite to stand against this threat. Can you help us reach them?" "Absolutely," Sarah replied. "We'll help you communicate with them. Let's gather everyone together." The Leora moved quickly, their agile forms darting through the forest. They climbed trees and leaped gracefully between branches, their colors shimmering as they communicated with their kin. Sarah watched in awe, realizing how different their society was. The Leora had a deep connection with their environment that humans could only dream of. The team gathered their supplies, ensuring they were ready for anything. They had brought equipment to study the planet, but now it was transformed into gear for defense. They packed medical kits, communication devices, and whatever tools they could use. The team was united in purpose, adrenaline coursing through them as they prepared for the unknown. After some time, Zarek returned, accompanied by a dozen other Leora. They were all different shades of color, each one more vibrant than the last. Zarek introduced them. "These are the guardians of our land. They will help us defend against those who come to take." Among the guardians was a fierce-looking Leora named Ilara. She was taller than the others, with piercing green eyes and an air of authority. "We have trained for this moment," Ilara said, her voice strong. "We will fight for our home." Sarah felt a surge of courage. "Together, we can do this," she assured everyone. "We can protect the Leora and their way of life." The team shared determined nods, their spirits lifted by the unity of purpose. As night fell, they moved through the forest, using the trees as cover. The Leora glided silently, and the humans did their best to mimic their movements. They approached a nearby settlement, where the Leora's kin had gathered. The sight was magical. Glowing tents made of leaves and branches, illuminated by bioluminescent plants. Zarek addressed the crowd, his voice rising above the soft rustle of the leaves. "Brothers and sisters, We face a grave danger, but together we are strong. The humans have joined us, and they will help us defend our home." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, fear mixed with curiosity. Some Leora stepped forward, their eyes wide with hope, while others remained skeptical. One elder Leora, his skin a deep shade of violet, raised his hand. "Humans have caused trouble in the past. Can we trust them?" Sarah stepped forward, her heart pounding. "I know your concerns are valid," she began, "but we are here to help. We come in peace and friendship. We have no intention of harming your world. Together, we can protect what we both cherish." The elder studied her, his gaze piercing. "Words are easy, but actions speak louder. Show us your strength and resolve." Mark stepped up next to Sarah, a determined expression on his face. "We may be different, but we have faced our own battles. We can fight alongside you. Just tell us what you need." Ilara spoke again, her voice resonating with authority. "We must set traps around our borders. They will be careless, thinking we are weak. We will ambush them when they approach." The crowd began to stir with renewed energy. The Leora moved quickly, forming teams to gather materials for the traps. They used branches, vines, and stones to create barriers that would conceal their true strength. As the humans worked alongside them, Sarah couldn't help but feel the power of unity. They were all different, yet they shared a common goal. With each trap they set, she felt their bond strengthen. The night wore on as they prepared, the air thick with anticipation. Sarah felt the weight of the moment, knowing that a confrontation was inevitable. She turned to Mark and Julia, who were busy reinforcing a barricade. "What do you think will happen?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark shrugged, trying to mask his own nerves. "I hope we can deter them. But if they come, we'll be ready." Just then, Zarek approached, his expression serious. "We must rest while we can. Tomorrow will be a long day. We need all our strength." As they settled down, Sarah looked up at the stars twinkling overhead. They felt closer than ever, and she thought of Earth, of home. But in that moment, Varenthia felt like a new home too. The battle for their futures was just beginning, and together, they would face whatever came next. In the distance, a low rumble echoed through the trees, a reminder that danger was approaching. And with it, the promise of adventure, courage, and a fight for survival. "You said," with the sun setting behind them, painting the sky in hues of red and orange, they looked at each other, their hearts racing. The adventure had just begun, and the fate of both their worlds hung in the balance. The first clash. The first light of dawn broke through the canopy of leaves, casting a golden hue across the forest floor. Sarah woke to the sound of rustling leaves and murmurs of the Leora preparing for the day ahead. The weight of anticipation hung in the air, a heavy reminder of the conflict that lay ahead. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. The team gathered with the Leora, their faces determined yet anxious. Zarek stood at the front, his presence commanding respect. "Today, we stand united. We will defend our home," he declared. The Leora cheered, their vibrant colors shimmering in the morning light. Sarah and her team exchanged glances, feeling the weight of the moment. Mark squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. "We've trained for this, and we're ready," he said, trying to infuse some confidence into the group. Julia nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration. As they moved deeper into the forest, the atmosphere shifted. A sense of urgency filled the air, and the birds ceased their morning songs, leaving an eerie silence. Sarah's heart raced as she glanced at the Leora, who moved with a graceful agility that amazed her. Ilara took the lead, her keen eyes scanning the surroundings. "We will set up near the eastern boundary," she instructed. "It is the most likely route the invaders will take. We will catch them off guard." They arrived at the designated spot, where the trees thinned out into a clearing. Here, they set their traps with precision. The Leora worked in harmony with the humans, demonstrating their knowledge of the land. They used branches and vines to create intricate snares, concealed perfectly among the foliage. After hours of preparation, the team gathered in a small circle, their hearts pounding. Zarek addressed them once more, his voice steady. "Remember, we fight not just for our land, but for our way of life. We must protect our home." Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the trees, sending a shiver down Sarah's spine. "They're here," Mark whispered, his eyes wide with fear. Ilara raised her hand, signaling for silence. They all listened intently as the sounds of heavy footsteps approached. A shadow moved through the underbrush, and Sarah's heart raced. She could feel the tension rising, each second stretching into an eternity. Out of the trees emerged a group of armored soldiers, their dark uniforms contrasting sharply against the vibrant greens of the forest. They moved in formation, their faces obscured by helmets. Sarah recognized the symbols on their armor, the insignia of a corporation notorious for exploiting planets. "Now," Ilara commanded, and the Leora sprung into action. They darted forward, using their agility to create distractions, drawing the soldiers' attention. Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline as she joined Mark and Julia, their training kicking in. The soldiers were taken off guard by the sudden attack. They stumbled, confusion flashing across their faces. The Leora moved swiftly, using their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage. They leaped from branches, raining down small projectiles made from the fruits of their land, aiming for the soldiers' armor. "Stay close," Mark shouted, rallying the humans. Sarah and Julia fell into step beside him, their resolve unwavering. They took positions behind the trees, ready to support the Leora as they engaged in battle. As the clash intensified, Sarah felt a rush of emotions: fear, anger, and determination. She saw a Leora get struck by a soldier's blast, but quickly recover, their resilience inspiring her to keep fighting. "Focus on the traps," Julia yelled, pointing to a snare nearby. They had set it carefully, and now it was their chance to see if it would work. Sarah nodded, knowing they needed to act fast. With a quick movement, she signaled to Mark and Julia. "Let's lure them in." Together, they threw stones towards the trap, creating noise and drawing the soldiers' attention. The soldiers, eager to investigate, moved closer to the snare. Just as they crossed the threshold, the trap sprang, ensnaring two of them. They struggled, but the vines held strong, giving the Leora the upper hand. "Keep pushing them back," Ilara shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. The Leora rallied around their fallen comrades, their fierce spirit igniting the air with determination. Sarah felt her heart swell with pride as they fought side by side. But the battle was far from over. More soldiers emerged from the tree line, their reinforcements arriving to turn the tide. Sarah's stomach sank as she realized the fight was escalating. "We need to fall back," Mark shouted. "We can't hold them off alone." "No," Ilara replied fiercely. "We must protect our home at all costs." The humans and Leora exchanged glances, knowing they couldn't abandon the fight. With renewed vigor, they pressed forward, using every ounce of strength they had. The forest echoed with the sounds of battle, the clash of metal, the cries of warriors, and the determination of those fighting for their lives. In the midst of the chaos, Sarah spotted a group of Leora cornered by a group of soldiers. Without thinking, she sprinted towards them, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "This way," she called, waving her arms to guide them. The Leora, trusting her instincts, followed her lead. They darted past the soldiers, using their agility to evade capture. Sarah felt a sense of accomplishment as she led them to safety, but the fight was still raging behind her. "Fall back to the trees," Ilara yelled, her voice cutting through the din. "We need to regroup." With the Leora following her, Sarah reached the safety of the trees. They huddled together, catching their breath as they assessed the situation. The soldiers were regrouping, and the tension in the air was palpable. "We can't let them advance," Zarek said, his eyes scanning the horizon. "We must protect the heart of our home." As they prepared for the next wave of attackers, Sarah felt a mixture of fear and determination. They had fought bravely, but she knew the battle was far from over. They were united in purpose, and together, they would face whatever came next. In the distance, the soldiers began to regroup, their numbers swelling as they planned their next move. Sarah steeled herself, ready to fight for both the Lyora and their new home. The battle for their futures was just beginning, and she would stand strong, side by side with her new allies. You said, the tide turns. The forest echoed with tension as Sarah and her companions huddled behind the thick trunks of ancient trees. They could hear the distant sound of soldiers moving, their footsteps heavy with intent. The air was thick with the scent of earth and anticipation, every rustle of leaves sending a thrill of anxiety through the group. Zarek was pacing, his brows knitted in concentration. We can't stay here for long. They'll regroup and come at us with more force. We need a plan, he urged, looking each of them in the eye. Sarah felt her heart racing. What if we create a diversion? She suggested, her mind racing with possibilities. We could draw them deeper into the forest, away from the heart of Lyora territory. Mark nodded, his face resolute. That could work. If we can lure them into a trap, we might be able to take out a few more before they realize what's happening. Ilara stepped forward, her eyes sparkling with determination. We have to be quick and precise. The Lyora know these woods better than anyone. We can use the trees and the terrain to our advantage. The plan was set. They decided to split into two groups. Zarek would lead one group to create noise and chaos further into the woods, while Sarah, Mark, and Ilara would remain hidden near their original position, ready to ambush the soldiers when they followed. As they moved into position, Sarah felt a mixture of fear and excitement coursing through her veins. She had never faced danger like this before. She thought about her family back on Earth and how far she had come from her old life. She was no longer just a scientist. She was a warrior, fighting for the survival of a world she had come to love. The first sound of the diversion echoed through the trees, a loud crash, followed by shouts and the sound of breaking branches. Zarek's group was drawing the soldiers away, and Sarah felt her heart surge with hope. "Let's go," she whispered, signaling to Mark and Ilara. They moved silently, creeping through the underbrush as they approached the path the soldiers would take. Sarah's palms were sweaty, but she focused on the task at hand. They had to make this count. As they waited, Sarah heard the sounds of the soldiers drawing closer. She could see their dark uniforms moving through the trees, eyes scanning for any sign of movement. Her pulse quickened as she prepared to spring into action. "Now," Ilara hissed, and they leaped out from their hiding spot, weapons at the ready. The soldiers, caught off guard, stumbled back in surprise. Sarah aimed her projectile at the closest soldier, the same kind of fruit that had caused such confusion earlier. The soldier recoiled as the sticky substance hit him, obscuring his vision. "Get them," he shouted, but it was too late. The Lyora had already moved in, their speed and agility overwhelming the soldiers. The battle erupted again, but this time it felt different. The Lyora fought with a fierce determination, their spirits lifted by the surprise attack. They seemed to dance through the trees, leaping over obstacles and dodging blasts as they took down their adversaries. "Stay close," Mark shouted to Sarah as they fought side by side. She could see the chaos unfold around her, and her heart soared with the adrenaline of battle. They were not just defending themselves. They were fighting for a future together. Ilara moved like a shadow, her skills honed in the art of combat. She tackled a soldier, using the momentum to send him crashing to the ground. "They will not take our home," she cried, her voice ringing with authority. The tide of the battle began to turn in their favor. The soldiers, once organized and threatening, were now disoriented and fearful. Many had been ensnared by traps set earlier, while others were struggling against the fierce onslaught of the Lyora. "Push forward," Zarek roared as he emerged from the chaos, leading his group back into the fray. "Do not let them regroup." Sarah felt a surge of energy as Zarek joined them. The morale of the Lyora was palpable, and she felt as though they were all part of something much larger than themselves. They were fighting for each other, for their homes, and for a future that was uncertain but bright. But just as hope began to rise, Sarah spotted a figure in the distance. A commander, dressed in a different, more ornate uniform, stood tall among the chaos. His presence commanded attention, and Sarah could see the flicker of strategy in his eyes. "The commander," she shouted, her heart sinking. "He's leading the remaining soldiers." Zarek's expression hardened. "We need to take him out. He's the key to their organization." With a nod, Sarah, Mark, and Ilara shifted their focus, moving stealthily toward the commander. The sounds of battle faded as they approached, the world around them narrowing to that singular goal. As they crept closer, they could hear the commander barking orders to his troops, trying to regain control. "Fall back. Form a line," he shouted, but the panic in his voice betrayed his unease. "On my mark," Zarek whispered, eyeing their target. 3, 2, 1. They launched their assault, Sarah throwing another projectile, while Zarek and Ilara rushed forward, weapons drawn. The commander turned, surprise etched on his face, as the distraction took him off guard. Before he could react, Ilara lunged, her blade aimed precisely. The commander dodged, but not fast enough. He stumbled back, and in that moment of hesitation, Zarek seized the opportunity. The clash was swift and fierce. The commander fought back with fervor, but he was outmatched. Zarek's skill and Ilara's agility combined in a dazzling display, pushing the commander to his limits. "Now," Mark shouted, grabbing Sarah's hand, "we have to finish this." With determination, they joined the fray. In a flurry of movements, they coordinated their attacks, and soon the commander found himself cornered. Finally, with one swift blow, Zarek disarmed him, the commander falling to the ground, his weapon clattering away. The soldiers around them faltered, and it was clear the tide had turned in their favor. As the last remnants of the soldiers retreated, Sarah stood panting, her heart racing with a mix of adrenaline and disbelief. They had done it. They had turned the tide of battle. "We did it," Mark exclaimed, his voice filled with exhilaration. Ilara raised her blade in triumph. "For our home," she cried, and the Lyora echoed her words, their spirits lifted high. But amidst the victory, Sarah felt a heaviness in her heart. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. As she looked at the fallen commander, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something much larger. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple, they gathered together, exhausted yet exhilarated. They had fought fiercely, but now they had to prepare for what was to come. The battle had shifted, but the war for their future had only just begun. The price of victory. The night descended upon the forest, wrapping the world in a cloak of darkness. The once vibrant greens and browns of the trees were now silhouetted against a starry sky, a tranquil backdrop to the chaos that had just unfolded. The air, once filled with the sounds of battle, was now eerily quiet, punctuated only by the distant chirping of crickets and the rustling of leaves. As the group gathered around a small fire, its flickering light cast shadows across their weary faces. They were bruised, battered, but alive. The adrenaline from the earlier fight still pulsed through their veins, though exhaustion was beginning to take its toll. Zarek sat on a log, his head bowed, lost in thought. He felt the weight of leadership heavier than ever before. "We won today," he said quietly, breaking the silence. "But it's only a temporary victory. The humans will regroup, and they won't stop until they destroy us." Sarah, sitting close to the fire, looked up at him. "What do we do now? We need to find a way to end this once and for all." Mark leaned in, adding, "We can't keep fighting like this. We need to strategize. We need a way to hit them where it hurts." Ilara, her eyes reflecting the firelight, nodded. "But how? We don't know their full strength or their plans. We barely escaped today." The group fell silent, each lost in their thoughts. The fire crackled softly, the only sound breaking the heavy atmosphere. It was a hard truth to swallow. They had won a battle, but the cost was looming over them like a dark cloud. "We need allies," Zarek finally spoke, raising his head to meet their eyes. "We can't do this alone. There are other factions, other beings who share our desire for freedom. If we can unite them, we might have a fighting chance." Sarah felt a spark of hope ignite within her. "Who do you have in mind?" "Leora clans to the north," Zarek replied, his voice steadying. "They have suffered at the hands of the humans as well. But gaining their trust will be difficult. They are wary of outsiders." Mark grinned. "Wary or not, we need them. Let's go tonight. We can't waste any time." Ilara frowned slightly. "It's risky. Traveling at night could lead us into traps set by the remaining soldiers." Zarek nodded, understanding the concern. "We'll have to be careful, but we have to take the risk. Staying here is just as dangerous. We can't wait for the humans to come for us again." After a brief discussion, they decided to move under the cover of darkness. They extinguished the fire, ensuring no smoke would betray their location. With hearts pounding and adrenaline coursing through their veins, they began their journey toward the north, where the Leora clans were said to dwell. As they traveled, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of dread clinging to her. Every rustle in the bushes felt amplified in the silence of the night. She glanced at her companions, their faces set with determination. They were risking everything for a chance at a better future. Hours passed, and fatigue began to settle in. The forest was dense, the path winding and unpredictable. Zarek led the way, moving with purpose, his senses heightened. Sarah walked closely behind him, feeling the camaraderie of their group. Finally, they'd reached the edge of a clearing. Moonlight spilled into the open space, illuminating the silhouettes of several figures. At first, they appeared to be just shadows, but as they stepped closer, Sarah could see they were Leora, warriors, proud and fierce. Zarek stepped forward, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "We come in search of allies," he called out, his voice echoing in the stillness. The Leora warriors exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. One stepped forward, a tall figure with silver hair and piercing blue eyes. "Why should we trust you, outsider?" the warrior challenged, her voice strong and commanding. "Because we share a common enemy," Zarek replied, his voice steady. "The humans seek to destroy us all. Today we fought back and won a small battle, but we cannot hold out without your support." The Leora warrior studied them closely. Sarah could feel the tension in the air as they awaited her response. "We have our own battles to fight. Why should we join yours?" Ilara stepped forward, her voice filled with conviction. "Because united, we stand a better chance. Alone, we are vulnerable. Together, we can drive the humans from our lands." The tall warrior regarded Ilara with a thoughtful expression. "You speak with passion, but passion does not win wars. What else do you offer?" Zarek exchanged glances with his companions, then took a deep breath. "We offer our loyalty, our skills, and the promise of a united front. If we can gather enough forces, we can push back against the humans and protect our homes." The warrior remained silent, weighing his words. Sarah felt the tension rise, unsure of how this would unfold. She could sense the flicker of hope in her companions, but doubt clouded the Leora's response. "Very well," the warrior finally said, her voice steady. "We will hear you out. But know this, if you betray our trust, you will face our wrath." "Thank you," Zarek replied, relief washing over him. "We promise to honor your trust." As they gathered around a makeshift fire with the Leora warriors, Sarah felt a sense of unity forming. They were no longer just a group of outcasts. They were part of something larger, a rebellion against a common foe. They exchanged stories, sharing their struggles and their hopes for a better future. But as the fire crackled and laughter filled the night, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The war was far from over. They had allies now, but each day brought new challenges. Would they be strong enough to withstand the coming storm? As the night wore on, Sarah resolved to prepare for whatever lay ahead. The price of victory had not yet been determined, and she knew that together they would face whatever challenges the future held. But for now, in this moment of camaraderie, she allowed herself to hope. Together, they were stronger. Together, they could fight for their world. The gathering storm. As dawn broke over the horizon, casting golden rays across the forest, the air buzzed with a sense of urgency. The flickering embers of the night's fire still glowed, but the warriors from both the Leora clans and Zarek's group were now busy preparing for what lay ahead. Zarek stood at the edge of the clearing, gazing into the distance. The promise of a new alliance filled him with hope, but the weight of their mission loomed heavy. The Leora warriors were fierce and skilled, but they were also proud. Convincing them to join their cause had been just the first step. They needed to forge a plan that would unite everyone against the humans. Zarek, Sarah called, breaking him from his thoughts. She approached with a determined look on her face. We need to discuss our strategy with the Leora leaders. If we're going to unite our forces, we need a solid plan. He nodded, grateful for her enthusiasm. Let's gather everyone then. We can't waste any more time. As they walked back to the center of the clearing, the air filled with the smell of smoke and cooking meat. The Leora warriors, dressed in their traditional garb adorned with vibrant colors, exchanged stories and laughter among themselves. It was a rare moment of peace, but Zarek knew it would be short-lived. Gathering the warriors, Zarek addressed both groups. Thank you for your warm hospitality. Today, we face a great threat, one that seeks to destroy our homes and our very way of life. We must come together as one to stand against the humans. The tall warrior from the night before stepped forward, her name revealed to be Ilyana. We will hear your plans, Zarek. But know this, our people have suffered greatly. If we are to join you, we need to understand what is at stake. Zarek took a deep breath, meeting Ilyana's piercing gaze. We have information that the humans plan to launch a full-scale attack on our territories. They have amassed a great number of forces to crush us once and for all. Our strategy is to disrupt their supply lines and attack their main camp while they are still vulnerable. A murmur spread through the crowd as warriors exchanged glances. Sarah stepped forward, sensing the need for a stronger connection. We have already successfully sabotaged one of their supply routes. If we work together, we can create diversions to split their forces. The key is speed and surprise. Lyanna crossed her arms, considering their words. And what of our own defenses? We cannot afford to lose our own land while aiding yours. Your land will be our land, Zarek responded, his voice steady. We fight for each other, not just for ourselves. If we fail, we all lose everything. If we succeed, we can rebuild and reclaim what is rightfully ours. After a lengthy discussion, Ilyana nodded slowly, turning to her fellow warriors. We will support you, but we will not act blindly. We need detailed plans and information. Show us how we can effectively strike the humans. With newfound energy, the two groups began mapping out their strategy. They worked tirelessly, exchanging ideas, scouting the terrain, and gathering intelligence on the humans' movements. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting warmth upon them as camaraderie bloomed. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, the group finally formulated a plan. They would strike at dusk, when visibility would be low, and the humans would be least prepared. Their combined forces would create chaos, allowing them to disrupt the human operations effectively. That evening, as they gathered once more around the fire, a feeling of unity had settled over the group. The laughter of the Leora warriors mingled with Zarek's companions as stories were shared, reinforcing their bond. Sarah felt a sense of belonging she hadn't experienced in a long time. But as the flames crackled, the looming threat of the humans hung heavy in the air. Each member knew that the next day would test their resolve and commitment. They shared their fears and dreams, each warrior finding strength in the others. The mood shifted when Ileana spoke, her voice low but filled with strength. Tomorrow, we fight for our future. We fight not just for ourselves, but for those who come after us. Let our battle be one of bravery and honor. As the fire flickered, illuminating their determined faces, Zarek felt the weight of his responsibility. He understood that the road ahead would be fraught with danger, but he was willing to take that risk. Together, they had become something more than individuals. They were a force united against a common enemy. In the quiet hours that followed, Zarek found himself wandering to the edge of the clearing, taking a moment to breathe in the stillness of the night. He looked up at the stars, reflecting on how far they had come. But beneath the beauty of the night sky, a sense of foreboding tugged at his heart. As he returned to the group, he felt a renewed determination. They had fought hard to reach this point, and tomorrow would define their future. With his companions at his side, and the strength of the Leora warriors, he believed they had a chance. But deep down, Zarek knew that victory would come at a price. As the night deepened, he silently vowed to protect those he had come to care for. No matter the outcome, they would face it together. Tomorrow, they would rise as one against the storm that threatened their existence. The dawn of reckoning. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, a tense stillness enveloped the camp. The night had been restless. Warriors tossed and turned, haunted by dreams of battle and uncertainty. Zarek, however, lay awake, steeling himself for the day ahead. He could hear the soft murmurs of the Leora warriors as they began their preparations, a reminder that they were no longer alone in this fight. After a quick breakfast, Zarek gathered both groups for a final briefing. He stood before the assembled warriors, his heart pounding with a mix of anxiety and determination. The time had come to turn their plans into action. Today, we fight not just for ourselves, but for our homes, our families, and our futures, he declared, his voice echoing through the clearing. Ileana stepped forward, her eyes fierce with resolve. We will begin the attack at dusk. Our best chance lies in striking quickly and quietly. We know the terrain better than the humans, and we will use that to our advantage. Remember, stealth is our ally. Sarah glanced around at their combined forces, a sense of pride swelling within her. We've trained hard for this moment. Trust in each other, and we will succeed. With their strategy firmly in place, the warriors set off to their designated positions, the adrenaline coursing through their veins. The air crackled with anticipation as they navigated the familiar paths, knowing that each step brought them closer to the impending confrontation. As the sun climbed higher, Zarek and Sarah led a small group to the edge of the humans' main encampment. Hidden in the underbrush, they peered through the foliage at the rows of tents and the bustle of activity. Zarek's heart raced as he spotted the humans, armed and alert, their movements revealing a mix of confidence and complacency. "This is it," Zarek whispered, turning to Sarah and the others. "We wait for the signal from Ileana and her team. The moment they create the distraction, we move in." Hours passed slowly, each minute feeling like an eternity. The sun began its descent, painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and pink. Zarek felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He was determined to make this count. Finally, as the last rays of sunlight faded, a distant explosion echoed through the air. Ileana's team had begun their attack, and chaos erupted within the human camp. Shouts filled the air as soldiers scrambled, their formations breaking apart in confusion. "Now, move," Zarek commanded, adrenaline fueling his every step as they rushed into the fray. The world around him transformed into a whirlwind of noise and chaos, but Zarek remained focused on their objective. The warriors engaged the unsuspecting humans, who were still reeling from the surprise attack. Zarek fought alongside his comrades, each strike a reminder of what was at stake. He felt the exhilaration of battle, the camaraderie that surged through them as they pressed on, determined to reclaim their homes. In the midst of the conflict, Zarek spotted Ileana fighting valiantly, her spear darting like a lightning bolt through the chaos. He felt a surge of admiration for the warrior princess who had united their forces. Her bravery inspired him, fueling his determination to push forward. But just as victory seemed within reach, a chilling realization struck him. The humans were regrouping, their commanders rallying the troops. They would not go down without a fight, and Zarek could see the tide beginning to shift. "Hold the line," he shouted, rallying his allies as the human forces began to push back. "We can't let them regain control." The battle raged on, and as the fighting intensified, Zarek found himself face to face with a human officer. The man sneered, raising his weapon, but Zarek was quicker. With a swift motion, he disarmed the officer, sending him sprawling to the ground. But in that moment of triumph, Zarek was struck from behind, a sharp pain searing through his side. Stumbling, he turned to see a human soldier grinning at him, ready to strike again. Just as the soldier lunged, a figure blurred past Zarek. It was Ilyana, her spear thrusting forward, catching the soldier off guard. He fell, and Zarek could only watch in awe as Ilyana's fierce determination lit up the battlefield. "Zarek," she called, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We need to fall back. Regroup with the others." With a nod, Zarek gritted his teeth against the pain and moved to join her. They dodged and weaved through the fighting, the air thick with the sounds of battle. As they reached their comrades, Zarek took a moment to catch his breath, glancing around to assess their situation. "Is everyone accounted for?" Sarah asked, her face etched with concern. "We need to retreat to higher ground," Ilyana declared, her expression serious. "We can regroup and launch a counterattack from there. We won't let their numbers overwhelm us." Zarek's heart raced as he considered their options. The chaos of battle continued to swirl around them, but he knew they had to act quickly. "Let's move," he shouted, leading the charge as they fought their way to the nearby ridge. As they reached the higher ground, Zarek looked back at the battlefield. The humans were relentless, but so were they. He felt the weight of their struggles pressing on his shoulders, but he refused to let despair take hold. Together, they had come this far, and they would not back down now. In that moment of uncertainty, Zarek found his resolve. They would fight together, no matter the cost. And as the dawn approached, illuminating the battlefield with its first light, they prepared for the final stand against their enemies. Together, he whispered to himself, "We will not be defeated." As the sun rose, hope ignited within him. The dawn of reckoning had arrived, and with it, the promise of a brighter future. The battle raged on, and as the fighting intensified, Zarek found himself face to face with a human officer. The man sneered, raising his weapon, but Zarek was quicker. With a swift motion, he disarmed the officer, sending him sprawling to the ground. But in that moment of triumph, Zarek was struck from behind, a sharp pain searing through his side. Stumbling, he turned to see a human soldier grinning at him, ready to strike again. Just as the soldier lunged, a figure blurred past Zarek. It was Ilyana, her spear thrusting forward, catching the soldier off guard. He fell, and Zarek could only watch in awe as Ilyana's fierce determination lit up the battlefield. "Zarek," she called, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We need to fall back. Regroup with the others." With a nod, Zarek gritted his teeth against the pain and moved to join her. They dodged and weaved through the fighting, the air thick with the sounds of battle. As they reached their comrades, Zarek took a moment to catch his breath, glancing around to assess their situation. "Is everyone accounted for?" Sarah asked, her face etched with concern. "We need to retreat to higher ground," Ilyana declared, her expression serious. "We can regroup and launch a counterattack from there. We won't let their numbers overwhelm us." Zarek's heart raced as he considered their options. The chaos of battle continued to swirl around them, but he knew they had to act quickly. "Let's move," he shouted, leading the charge as they fought their way to the nearby ridge. As they reached the higher ground, Zarek looked back at the battlefield. The humans were relentless, but so were they. He felt the weight of their struggles pressing on his shoulders, but he refused to let despair take hold. Together, they had come this far, and they would not back down now. In that moment of uncertainty, Zarek found his resolve. They would fight together, no matter the cost. And as the dawn approached, illuminating the battlefield with its first light, they prepared for the final stand against their enemies. Together, he whispered to himself, "We will not be defeated." As the sun rose, hope ignited within him. The dawn of reckoning had arrived, and with it, the promise of a brighter future. The battle raged on, and as the fighting intensified, Zarek found himself face to face with a human officer. The man sneered, raising his weapon, but Zarek was quicker. With a swift motion, he disarmed the officer, sending him sprawling to the ground. But in that moment of triumph, Zarek was struck from behind, a sharp pain searing through his side. Stumbling, he turned to see a human soldier grinning at him, ready to strike again. Just as the soldier lunged, a figure blurred past Zarek. It was Ileana, her spear thrusting forward, catching the soldier off guard. He fell, and Zarek could only watch in awe as Ileana's fierce determination lit up the battlefield. "Zarek," she called, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We need to fall back. Regroup with the others." With a nod, Zarek gritted his teeth against the pain and moved to join her. They dodged and weaved through the fighting, the air thick with the sounds of battle. As they reached their comrades, Zarek took a moment to catch his breath, glancing around to assess their situation. "Is everyone accounted for?" Sarah asked, her face etched with concern. "We need to retreat to higher ground," Ileana declared, her expression serious. "We can regroup and launch a counterattack from there. We won't let their numbers overwhelm us." Zarek's heart raced as he considered their options. The chaos of battle continued to swirl around them, but he knew they had to act quickly. "Let's move," he shouted, leading the charge as they fought their way to the nearby ridge. As they reached the higher ground, Zarek looked back at the battlefield. The humans were relentless, but so were they. He felt the weight of their struggles pressing on his shoulders, but he refused to let despair take hold. Together, they had come this far, and they would not back down now. In that moment of uncertainty, Zarek found his resolve. They would fight together, no matter the cost. And as the dawn approached, illuminating the battlefield with its first light, they prepared for the final stand against their enemies. Together, he whispered to himself, "We will not be defeated." As the sun rose, hope ignited within him. The dawn of reckoning had arrived, and with it, the promise of a brighter future.